my name is Sabne Raznik, and you have found the channel here on YouTube where I do what I call mini readings, which means it's just one poem. Sometimes my work, if I'm promoting something, usually somebody else's. I like to share poetry from all around the world here in translation, usually in English. That's the language I'm most familiar with, but if you find a poem that you really like and you are able to read its original language, I encourage you to do so, because poetry in translation is a very different very different animal than poetry in its original language. So by all means, if you are able to read both, do so. Read them next to each other and enjoy the experience. There are plenty of videos here. I've had this channel since 2011, I think. So do the deep dive and you can see me get older. It is what it is, right? But really, the goal is just to share the joy of poetry from all over the world. And it first started out with me just reading my own stuff, but then I was like, I'm not going to monetize. That way I can share poetry from everybody everywhere. I do get permission from the poets where possible. I have done that quite a bit, and you will see that as you go on down. Now, for the longest time, I didn't post on a schedule. In fact, you will find there were times when I would go years without uploading here. Circumstances, health, I am disabled. Multitude of reasons why that would happen. But I am going to start trying to upload here on a schedule, starting out with at least once a month. We'll see how that goes, and if it goes okay, if I'm able to keep that up fairly decently, we'll see if I can up it, okay? But we'll start out with once a month. Now, I'm not one of those people that sit around here and go, like and subscribe. You're an adult. You know what you want to do. But I would encourage people to subscribe, basically just because I don't post on the schedule. I don't upload on a schedule, and I know saying post like it's social media, but anyway, I don't upload. Well, it is a kind of social media, but I don't upload on a schedule. And if you subscribe, then at least you would get notification, right? then you wouldn't miss it. But now I'm going to try to do that at least once a month. Now, exactly at what point in the month, I haven't decided yet. We'll see as we go. But I am going to try to make that a thing. I think once a month is fairly reasonable, even for somebody like me whose health is like from 1 hour to the next can be like completely different animal. I mean, for real, I can wake up feeling wonderful, and then an hour later I can be in bed. Or I can wake up in bed and not able to get out. And then in an hour I can be like, let's have a solo dance party. Sometimes I can be sick for days before I can feel better. It's all up in the air for me. It's just my condition. I have cerebral palsy. I have post-impairment syndrome. I've developed a non-epileptic seizure disorder fairly recently. That happened during the pandemic. I have post-traumatic, complex post-traumatic syndrome. I have all kinds of things. All kinds of things. It's a long... Honey, I always said I would never write my memoirs, because if I did, people would be like, she's lying. There's no way that all of that could happen to one person in one lifetime. That's crazy. So I'll never do it, because nobody would believe it. Except those people that lived it with me. And even then, that's kind of questionable. But honestly, it would be true. But, whatever. Yeah, so the point is, my health is insane, and it's everywhere all at once, all the time, so it's really hard to do anything at all on a schedule. It's hard just to keep sleep on a schedule, let alone anything else. But I am going to try to at least upload here once a month. We'll see how that goes. the inspiration for that is I have been taking some classes on digital marketing. And of course, one of the keystones of digital marketing is having a schedule. So I thought, well, we'll try it. And the most reasonable form of schedule I could think of was, well, once a month. It's very tenuous, it's a schedule. It's regular, but it's not like it's once a week, It'll give me some room to wiggle in as necessary. We'll see how it goes. It's the best I can do for a promise. And like I said, if it goes well over a period of time, I'll see what I can do about doing better with it. Today we're going to read one of my poems, which I haven't done in a long time. Even though this year I did release a new book. But the new book I released was a selected poem, so it was poems that have been published before in other collections. Anyway, if you're interested in my work, you can find all of the available books on my website at sabneraznik.com. They're all linked there, where you can get them, right? And there's one book that is a handmade micro chapbook that I made myself, and so you can't order it anywhere. You have to order it directly from me, because I made it myself. But there are directions on the website how to do that. Okay? All right. And that one is the proceeds for that one. The shipping goes for the shipping. But other than that, all proceeds for that one go to St. Jude's Research Hospital in Tennessee. Because that's what the micro chapbook is about. The handmade micro chapbook is about the childhood cancer journey. So all the proceeds for it go for childhood cancer research. But to order it, you have to order it directly from me. But like I said, there are directions for that on the website itself. The rest of them, if you follow the link, it will take you to places where you can order the books from, where they are currently available. And you will also see where you can go to read my e-zine and submit to it if you'd like. Alright, the poem I'm going to read today is from my debut collection, Following Hope, that came out in 2007. This book was 15 years in the making. So there were a lot of poems that ended up not making it into this collection, because that's a lot of writing to get written and then thrown out. I have a lot of journals, I guess is what you would call them, but they're full of poems and they're just stuffed in boxes in my closet somewhere, and that are just poems that I have written, and then over time I'll go through and pick out the best and put them in collections. But most of them, the grand majority of what I write ends up boxed up somewhere, because I don't think it's good enough to publish. I guess they'll get handed down to somebody after I die or something for them to decide what to do with it. If there's anybody I'm related to who cares anything about literary stuff, I have no idea. At this time, I don't think there will be. Just looking around at my family members, I honestly don't think there's a single person in my family who's going to give a hoot nanny about any of it. But in case there is, they'll be there. But anyway, this particular poem I'm going to read out of this collection, my hair is in my way, is a poem that I won't say I've never read in public before. I think I have. I've never read on this channel before. It's because when I first got this book published, it was really controversial in the circle of people who knew me personally for me to publish this in a public space. They were okay with me writing poetry as long as it's my own private business. They were not okay with me publishing it publicly. It was real every time I would publish a poem in a magazine or something, it would become a controversy. When I, throughout my teens and early 20s. And I don't know. It was a thing. I don't know. And somebody would pick an issue with a metaphor that I used, or they would pick an issue with the subject, or that, that thing that all us poets have to deal with. Is this about me? And for the longest time, I would always say no, because usually the answer was no. But at this point in my life, I'm like, even if the answer is really no, I'll just look at them and say, well, if the shoe fits. Because it's like, at this point in my life, I've learned a lot about psychology. And now I'm like, well, if you're projecting, that's your problem, not mine. So now I've just got to the point where I'm like, well, if the shoe fits, darling. But poet problems, am I right? I mean, a lot of you watching this may not be poets. You just may like poets. But those of you who are also poets, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? But anyway, so none of my poems at this time that this collect, now people are a lot more accepting of my work. People are a lot more accepting that I publish. They've gotten used to the idea, because it's 2023, right? This was 2007. People have gotten a lot more accepting of me, period. And I've gotten a lot more loud, I guess, about standing up for myself too. A lot more assertive, as my mom would say. My mom would use the word assertive. But in 2007, when every publication I would make, even in a small local newspaper, was controversial. The most controversial poem in this collection was one called Fingers. Okay? But it's also turned out over time that it's the fan favorite. But in order to get the book published, I had to get permission from the circle around me, which now that I'm older seems like a completely ridiculous concept. Now, the older me would just be like, mind your business, go dig a hole somewhere, if the shoe fits kind of thing. Your projections are your problem. But anyway, yeah, the younger me that was trying to get this published, the way I managed to get permission to publish this, because this was the most controversial poem in the whole collection, and like I said, at that time, every single time I would publish a poem, no matter where I published it, it was controversial. To publish a book was, she's blowing up the world. I had to promise them that I would never publicly read the poem Fingers. And I did. So for a long time, I never did read it publicly. And now the people that I had to promise that I would never read it publicly are, I don't know, they're completely out of my life. For all I know, they might be dead. I don't know. I don't know where they are in the world. But they're not in my life at all. So they're non-players at all. They're complete non-players now. So I have read it publicly. Very rarely. Once or twice at the very most. But I have found that every single time somebody reads this particular collection, or I did put it in the selected poems that I published this year. So the people who have read, the people who have read the selected poems that I put out this year, which is titled Fingers. I wanted to title it Through Our Skin, but it's also it's a bilingual. It's also Spanish. So Through Our Skin was just way too long a title in Spanish to put on the cover of a magazine. The cover of the book. So I went with Fingers because it looked nicer on the title of the book. Since you had to have the English and the Spanish both on the title of the book. Through Our Fingers, it was just so long in Spanish. Yeah, you got to consider things like that when you're putting together a book, right? So I changed the title to Fingers, since that poem was in there and it fit better on the cover. But anyway, so people have been getting a hold of the new selected bilingual poems, and the poem Fingers is in it. And so it's become a thing again, where people are picking that poem out again and going, wow, this is the standout poem. Which is interesting, because for me, if I was going to pick out a standout poem of my early career, possibly of my whole career at this point, I would say Valhalla Blue. It was the one that took the longest ride of my entire career to date. And for me, it's the deepest, and it has the most metaphor, the most imagery. It's just really fun. But for everybody else, if they're reading my poems and Fingers is included in those bunch of poems, they will always zero in on Fingers. Brendan Kennelly had a copy of this collection of Following Hope, and he zeroed in on Fingers too. And he said he carried this collection around Dublin with him. As you know, he was a famous walker. He was insomniac, so he spent a lot of his time at night walking around Dublin, talking to anybody and everybody, regardless of social or economic class. Just if you happened to be awake when he was awake, walking around Dublin, he would talk to you. He was famous for that. And apparently he would walk around with my collection in his pocket. That's what he said. And Fingers was a standout poem for him. Now, no, I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just saying that over time, from 2007 when this collection was released to now, gathering these anecdotes that these different poets have brought to me, Brendan Kennelly and others, I'm coming to the conclusion that Fingers must be the standout poem of my career, and yet I have largely ignored it because it was so controversial in the circle of people who knew me personally when it was published. I'm going to break that now. I'm going to put it out there on my YouTube in public now and break that and be like, okay, since it's the standout poem of my career to those who have read it, it's time to put it out there and acknowledge that, right? And to all those people who are uncomfortable with that, you need to sit with yourself for a while and figure out why you're uncomfortable with that. Because your projections are not my problem. I don't know. That's all I can say to you. I don't know. Right? I am going to honor the art for a change. You have to sit down and deal with yourself. Okay. All right. This is Fingers. My body pulls your fingers in like meteors to Jupiter. Your touch is stiff and sharp. My skin is tense and raw, each violation like cactus thorns raking down my shapeless lines. Eventually, I numb. Your fingernail scrapes red the line between my breasts. I want to seize it, feel the bone crack, grind against my teeth as I scream out contradictions of what I know is truth. I feel vomit foaming, spilling over from my lips. Your finger traces the soft lines of my belly and finds rest in my navel with all the certainty of ships. What are you dreaming of? How is it that I fit in? In this night, dark and charged as murder, I lay. Internalized emotions, fear that is paralyzing and cold as death, with guilt ladled like a soup stain in my lap. I know, never again. Never again. And even now, I see a white bird over my bed. So there it is. there's the poem that scared everybody. But then on the other hand, seems to really touch everybody in important ways. And so it needs to be acknowledged. And so I have acknowledged it in public on my YouTube channel, as it deserves, finally. So there you go. And that's from my debut collection, Following Hope. Like I said, you can find all of my works. You can find links to them on my website at sabneraznik.com. I hope you enjoyed that. And I don't know if I could call this the joy of poetry, but this particular poem, but there's definitely plenty of joy of poetry on this channel. Go find it. It's there. It's there. There's lots of videos here. We're well over 100 videos on this channel now, going back to 2011. Sometimes I occasionally do sing covers of songs. I don't know if the audio on all of them has survived, because, you know, just because I never monetize this channel doesn't mean that the censors don't get to it every once in a while. But I hope you have a beautiful, fabulous day. And like I said, hopefully I will see you next month here. Yeah? Okay. Down and go, honey.